so much harder. Fuck, could you imagine being a man? It must be so hard. Like, you have to work dangerous jobs. Oh my god. It must be so hard to be a man. Feminism is oppressing men. Grow the fuck up. I just don't know, hey. I don't know why you men are getting so emotional over this. You're being awfully sensitive about women just wanting to be equal, and just wanting to kind of live. You're being really emotional and sensitive. You're overreacting. This is such an overreaction. And also you're getting triggered by women just kind of wanting to live. It just sounds like you're just a bunch of snowflakes, and I think you just need to grow up and harden the fuck up. Aren't you supposed to all be alphas? Manly men just don't get triggered and so emotional about these little things. Just grow up. You know what I want to see? I want to see Drew rip this guy's ass apart, just and then turn him around. Because she would. I'd pay to see that. I just can't get it. This guy really thought he did something, and he just really didn't. Yeah, men definitely work the more manly dangerous jobs, but they don't have to. You don't have to. I'm definitely not going to judge you for wanting to work as a receptionist, but you know who will? The manly men. So I mean, hey, you alphas, I think, just have a lot of shit to work through. It's fine. I'm alpha too.
All right, guys. So you've seen the video, and I mean, I don't know. It's pretty stupid if you ask me. The fact that those opinions have come across in such a way, they just make absolutely no sense, because this is clearly just driven from emotion and irrational behavior and a sense of entitlement too. I think personally that men going down the harder route or taking the harder path in life and then not being able to talk about their emotions or their feelings is absolutely stupid. And the concept that this individual is driving, that men cannot talk about mental health if they choose to take the harder life, because it's a joke, it's a gimmick. She's making a mockery of men going through mental struggles. Now, I want to broach this question to you. What about the people who are genuinely clinically depressed? What about people who have high anxiety, PTSD? You know, those are byproducts of, well, either things that have been genetically passed down to them, or it's a byproduct of them being in a stressful job, in a STEM job. You know, construction workers, laborers, police officers, medics, soldiers suffering from mental health conditions. What do you say about that? Do you think that disqualifies us? Do you think that we no longer have a say because we chose that route? Well, what about every time you have an argument with your friend, and if we said, yeah, well, we don't care, you don't get the right to talk about mental health or get to talk about your feelings because it's invalid, you made that choice, how would that make you feel? You want to talk about oppression? I mean, I'm getting very high feminist vibes from you, and if you're really talking about oppression and how men don't have a right to say that because of the patriarchy or because we're these wannabe pseudo alpha males, well, take it back to the roots of feminism. And I mean the real roots of feminism, where women were seen as the subservient sex. And I don't agree with that. I personally don't agree with that. Doesn't make me a feminist. I just believe everybody should have an equal say. Everybody should be treated as an equal. And in doing so, everybody then should be able to talk about their thoughts and their feelings, irrespective of what route they've gone down in life, because that's what human beings do. We are social creatures. We're programmed with emotions and thoughts. So if you're trying to take that away, well, who's really the oppressor? By you making clips like this, I mean, how are you any different to the men back then who oppressed your sisters? Now, I think that this is also just a bit of a cover. It's a bit of a guise under your true intention, which, to be fair, you just come across as a really bitter person. And I mean, on your comments, you mentioned that all of a sudden this was some sort of satirical take on the concept of male empowerment and male struggles, which, to be fair, isn't really funny, because while it's meant to be humor, I think this was more of a backpedal when you realize just how much flack you are getting, when you realize just how much pull my friend had or has. I mean, the simple fact that I'm also making this video and giving my own take on it just shows just how wide and how viral that message has gone. So all I would say is just be careful about what you post, because the thing is, every time that a guy speaks out against women remotely, the mobs come for him and cancel culture starts to eliminate him. You see, what's happening now with this new movement is that men are starting to reclaim their strength, but not in the way that you think. It's not about battling against women. It's about reclaiming and becoming more engaged with our inner masculinity. And that doesn't mean that we're going to start oppressing women. That was never the goal. That was never the objective. Maybe if that's what happened like 100 years ago, which you and I both weren't alive in. So even then, this argument's invalid because this has not happened to you. I don't see how this is going to infringe on your human rights as a human female. This isn't a battle about sex. This is a battle that we as a subgroup of the population are dealing with when it comes to actually being able to function in society and achieve our own goals. It has nothing to do with taking power away from women or you specifically. So your whole argument here is pretty irrational, and honestly, it's uncalled for. I would say, going forward from this, instead of putting people down for wanting to improve themselves, how about we encourage each other? Because guys are doing that too, Guys are doing that to girls. If you want to just keep this on the whole topic of male empowerment and how men are judging other men. Okay, yes, that is also true. But then don't women also judge other women for far less? You made this comment saying that, oh yeah, you've got no problem with, men going into roles like being a hairdresser or a nail tech, which I'm sure there are. But yeah, of course there are going to be men who are going to judge them, because there are going to be those who come from that subgroup of being very masculinely driven. So the concept of going into anything other than a STEM role, job position, or going into like an arduous lifestyle is going to be weird to them. But we're also learning to deal with that. It doesn't mean that just because they've done that person is now cast out as an outsider. It's the same with, women serving in the military. If men take the harder road in life, and joining the military, I'd say, is probably one of the hardest roads that any person can take. If they are then disqualified for talking about their struggles and their issues, well, then what about the women who are joining the military? Do they not get to talk about it, or do they get a free pass because they're women? I'd like to know what your response to that is, because to me, it just seems as though there's a whole load of entitlement coming here, and it makes zero sense. Instead of putting these people down, instead of putting men who are trying to become more masculine so that they can go into roles and actually contribute to society and forge like wholesome relationships with themselves, which in turn will then affect the relationships they have with women and other people around them, instead of putting them down for putting those efforts in there and taking the steps forward, how about you just give thanks? How about you show some gratitude? Because I guarantee this. Let's go back to the world wars. If men didn't fight in the wars, if men did not, assume the mantle of taking an aggressive stance to defend the nations, well, then we'd be living completely different lives. You might not even be where you are. You could be speaking a different language. You might be subjugated to an actual form of oppression, because this concept of oppression you're talking about is complete bullshit. I'm sorry, but it is. It's complete BS. It's nothing but ignorant statements on subjects that you know very little about. Where's the factual evidence that men don't suffer from mental health, or men don't have a right to to have an opinion on how they suffer or how they have struggles. We're human beings. Human beings are flawed in nature. So yes, we are all going to suffer. And me personally, knowing many people who happen to be male and suffer from mental health, that was a low blow. For me, that was a low blow. And that's why I'm making this video. Because all of a sudden that because they're males, because they're men, they don't get a chance to talk about their clinical depression. They don't get to talk about the anxiety, bipolarity, schizophrenia, PTSD. I know people who've seen their friends get murdered. Do they not get a chance to talk about that, to try and heal from that? Must they suffer in silence and then become another statistic? How about you? How are you feeling right now? Because I realize that you've probably gotten some flack over this whole controversy that you've started. Let me know, because I'd be very curious to know what's going on. I mean, going back to the whole comment section in your in your post, you started to backpedal and say that it was satire. I wonder just how much of that actually is true. I'm willing to bet that it's not, because I think you realized just how much of a fuck up that the whole move was. You see, this whole concept of cancel culture and mob mentality works both ways. And this is just, I mean, let this be like a friendly warning. If anything, a stern but friendly warning. Don't put people down just because they're trying to work on themselves, because that's uncalled for. And there's no reason or rhyme behind that. Now, you want to have an opinion, by all means have an opinion. But if you've got nothing good to say, maybe just refrain from saying it at all, because once it goes out there, like once this video goes out there, it's there in the ether. Now, I'm prepared to deal with whatever responses come from this video, but I'm willing to bet that a lot of them will be positive. Unless, of course, you decide to rally like all your friends against me and just try and talk up and kick up a storm and say that I'm just another misogynist or whatever other fucking bullshit story gets thrown out in today's day and age. Because I'm talking to you as one human to another, but seeing as you insisted on dealing on sex and gender, well then, yeah, okay, we'll discuss that. Because I'd like to ask you this question too. And I completely agree. Like, there's nothing wrong with men being in touch with their feminine side. Like, I also agree. This whole concept of being pseudo-alpha is pretty cringe, but then so are hyper-masculine women. I mean, it raises a question, like, why do you need to behave that way, right? And sure, we all have like our own issues that we deal with. But when you're just acting a way to try and prove a point, when you're jumping on a bandwagon, and when you're fighting the good fight, so to speak, for reasons that don't actually hold, or rather, reasons that haven't been looked through properly. If you've thoroughly done your research, you'd realize that mental health is a huge epidemic that has been around way before any disease. And with men going through the hard lives that they do, for those who choose that hard life, we need to support them instead of put them down. And that, I mean, those were the dynamics from way before this whole digital age took place. And you know what? Most of the time, we actually had a harmonious coexistence. I agree. There are men out there who need to learn self-control. There are men out there who need to learn how to control their egos, control their emotions. But putting those who are trying to find their way on the path down isn't going to help anymore. I don't think you want to live in a society where men are just docile, assuming that, you want one for a partner one day. What, do you just want him under your thumb? Because I guarantee that you'll get bored of him immediately or very soon after. So think about those dynamics too. Just think about how your words have an impact and just what they actually weigh on. Because attacking people just because you have had a couple bad experiences isn't going to get you very far. So yeah, I just thought I'd make this video and shed some light on, instead of putting people down, why don't we raise people up? To that end, I've started a Discord server, which is also based on self-improvement. If you're interested, please feel free to join. And in this server, I aim to bridge the communities between non-military and military personnel so that we can talk about our experiences, host lectures and lessons, and learn from each other. It's all about building and knitting together communities and helping us all separate from the old habits, the negative habits, in order to elevate our lifestyles. You know what, Renee? If you're watching this video, I'd even like to welcome you to the server. Let's have a discourse. Let's have a discussion if that's what you really want. Because I think there's a lot that we could learn from each other if you're open to it. This is SK. I'm signing out. Peace.